Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of John Wick 3 with the boys Connor
Hello.
and Benny.
Hi there.
It's been a cool 5 years since the first John Wick film came out, rebooting the career of our boy Keanu Reeves. And now we've got the third installment in the series, directed by Chad Stahelski. And hey, we've seen it. And now we're going to get into how we were feeling before going in, and then we'll get into the non-spoiler part of the review. Connor, why don't you start us off here, man? You recently watched John Wick 1 and 2 again, gave it a revisit.
Yeah, I did an introduction for my girlfriend into the world of John Wick.
The Wickverse.
The Wickverse. Oh, please let that be,
we
how
coined
this goes
that.
on. Yeah.
Or I coined it.
So I remember watching the first one, and I think the sentiment that I had leaving the cinema for that was the same as pretty much anyone that came out of that cinema, which is that was so much better than it had any right to be. Like, all the ingredients for that film were for it to be a perfectly acceptable, action film that no one will ever see. And, the premise was bizarre. Guy loses his dog and goes on a killing rampage. I mean, so much of this shouldn't have worked. And I remember just coming out of that film being like, fuck, that was hectic. I loved this kind of the humor that was in it. This kind of, all the characters had this awe of John Wick. I really loved the world building. I think it's one of the strongest aspects of this franchise so far. Just kind of building this world of assassins. So yeah, I was really loved number one. I watched number two. I think they did a really good job of expanding the world and maintaining that kind of feel. I did think that the second one didn't feel as fresh or novel, which it never could. But it felt a little bit more just like a standard action film, albeit a really good it was good action. It didn't have something to it. Yeah. And so, coming into this one, I was a little bit worried about the fatigue of, just seeing the same scenes play out, the same kind of style of adventure, a lot of reviews had come out saying that it was really good, but I don't know. I was a bit trepidatious. I thought, it's going to have to do something a little bit different. It's either going to have to be spectacular action, or it's going to have to, introduce a new story plot element, or it's really going to have to work on the world building, something to really kind of maintain my interest in the franchise.
Yeah. How about you, Benny? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I can't say much more than that. That's a very similar trajectory to how I felt. The interesting thing about these first two films was we had a 4-month delay in Australia on getting them. So the word had well and truly reached us, in particular with the first one.
So much hype.
Exactly, yeah. And it was one of those beautiful movies that for me lived up to it. I just remember coming out of that movie and being expectedly wowed by the action, but also really surprised by, as you said, kind of the world building, the way they had this just fully formed universe that slowly kept peeling back and revealing more and more layers to it. It felt so much like an adaptation of an existing work, especially a comic book. That really impressed me. The second one, I remember probably feeling maybe a little let down by, and at this point, I haven't revisited it since the cinema, and I do not remember much about it at all. Unfortunately.
I don't think you'd get much of a different impression. Like when I rewatched it, it wasn't like I gained something that I hadn't seen the first time. Like there was no kind of increased.
That's how I remember.
It's like, this just isn't as good as the first.
Yeah, I remember really loving the first just little segment of it that was like an epilogue to the first film, because I thought that was actually like a better ending to the first film than the first one had. But beyond that, it was not a huge kind of escalation for me. Just going into this one, I guess my main takeaway is always just how much I fucking love Keanu Reeves, and the whole world seems to now. So I'm just like, whatever my thoughts on the second one would have been, even if they were much worse, I'm just like, yeah, fuck yeah, more Keanu. Always so happy to see him.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard act to follow, boys. You pretty much summed up all my feelings.
All right, so on to the non-spoiler segment.
Let's move on. No, I think one was definitely stronger than the second, and Keanu Reeves, he's just you're on his side, you know. You just want to love the guy, and he's just a really good face for this brand, and no wonder why it's so popular. It really has become the sort of like the big action staple of this back half of the 2010s. And the trailers were pretty strong for this. I was kind of like, maybe this is going to be an improvement from the second and be close to the quality of the first one, and kind of be one of those genres, because kind of like How to Train Your Dragon, how I felt about that was went 1, 3, 2. I thought maybe John Wick 3 was kind of going to go down that path.
Yeah.
So we've seen it. Let's get into what was good about this film in the non-spoiler part. Spoilers coming later.
Yeah. Can I bring up the first thing? Because
Yeah.
I've been dying to talk about this.
Yeah.
I just talked about how that this movie would have to up the ante on some aspect of the franchise for me to really be, kind of engaged with this film. And I think that it actually delivered on a number of fronts, but one of the main fronts was the action. I did not think that they could. I think that they had found a really unique voice in the first one for how the action played out, and I think that they, stepped it up a notch for this one. And not just more, but it was like more inventive ways of showing. Like, I get a little bit bored when it's just the same thing over and over again. This felt like, I don't know, that they were trying to push some boundaries.
It was so varied. It was such a brilliant escalation of everything just in the action sphere that first one had. And it branched out in so many different ways. This movie is so much more of a martial arts action film than either of the previous ones that I can recall. But it also brings back everything you loved before, and just it's just like next levels everything. It's so engaging on an action level.
And I think that I'm not usually a fan of that style of filmmaking for sequels, which is just this idea of like, let's just turn everything up to 11 because that's what sequels are meant to be. They're just meant to be bigger and bolder and all that kind of stuff. But I think that this movie does it in a way that is like that increase makes it interesting. Like there's a hook to it.
I say there's some parts in here where it was so savage in the action. I was kind of like, I've never seen that before. And the audience reaction was like, oh, shit.
One
like,
of those.
There was some really good like bullet points in this. Like,
Literally, yeah.
I thought I completely agree. Where it was trying to dial it to 11, it really, and it met that.
Yeah.
It went for it, and it met that what it wanted to try and do.
And I loved that this movie did elicit a lot of reactions from the audience. Like watching it in a packed theater is something that I'm glad that we did, because you get those, like, there's some, it's not just non-stop high gore violence or something, but there's some things that, like you said, would be particularly savage that would get an audible reaction, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, we did get the raid guy in this, correct, at the end there. So I think, I don't know what happened in terms of maybe his involvement in this, in maybe more than an acting role, but you definitely felt that more martial arts, hand-to-hand combat vibe in this one.
I think it's worth noting that Keanu Reeves is really highly involved in martial arts, just personally, but also, I don't know if either of you have seen his directorial debut, which is The Man of Tai Chi.
No, I haven't.
No, I didn't see
it's
that
called
one.
Man of Tai Chi. Yeah,
It is.
Which is, I've watched actually twice. Is a really cool martial arts film. I hold a kind of soft spot for martial arts films, and you can definitely see the influence in this. I mean, you can see it in the first ones. Like, he's definitely knows what he's doing. But in this one, you really kind of you feel the influence.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot of input on these films. The way that they lean into his ability as a physical performer is so like apparent. They really know where his strengths are. I would love to find another, film where the title character, this one guy, has so little dialogue in it. And just conveys so much through his actions and the way he fights.
And he's so lovable as well.
Yeah, and he's
For some reason.
Yeah, it is weird though, because like he's not like, he fights dirty, like, but he's always outnumbered. It's brilliant. I love the way they just have him as this just like obviously he's the Baba Yaga, like he's the shit, but he's also like so overpowered by everyone else. Like the number of cock shots in this movie. Like he's just punching everyone in the dick. It's so good. Like I love that they have their hero being kind of practical about this. Like, I got to survive any way I can.
That was one thing that I always liked about this franchise, was the way he did the headshots. Like, it was not like that 80s Arnie where it's sort of spray shooting people in the chest. He's like, takes them out, in the head, done deal, you are dead. Like I thought that practicality and that realism within amongst all the crazy flashiness has been one of the strengths of this genre. It somehow manages to wrestle with the two and make it feel real.
I mean, these movies, all of them really, have combined this realism with this kind of, well, non-realism, like this kind of fantasy so well. Because I mean, when he holds a gun, when he shoots a gun, you get this sense that it feels natural, it feels real, it feels realistic. But I mean, the things that he's doing are so unrealistic, and there's it's just this
the body
weird,
count is in
awesome kind of melding of the two that makes it such a cool experience to go in on.
It doesn't just the body count must hit 3 figures in this easy. It's crazy, and there's one shot in here where he's fighting 2 guys, and it's just staying on that one shot for a significant portion of time, and I was like, that's ballsy. You can cut away, you can make it flashy, you can give it that really rapid fire editing, but to just hold on those shots, and still make it feel kinetic and have that sort of modern action feeling. I'm always very impressed when directors have the balls to kind of go and do that.
Well, directors and particularly choreographers. I mean, I don't want to say it's a cheat, but a lot of people will choose to do the quick cutaways to make everything seem as though it's seamless and kind of flows. And when you have a particularly difficult choreographed fight that you're doing in 1 or 2 shots, I can't describe how impressive that is to watch and just see this being pulled off. Like the amount of time it would take to just put that together.
It's so clear they put the effort in. Every single fight in this movie, and there are so many that involve just so many people, but they all kind of boil down to one-on-ones, one after the other, or one-on-twos, and every one of them feels like at once like this amazingly, beautifully choreographed dance, but also like an actual just fight to the death between these people. Like they're all so well designed and executed, and then executed. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I meant when I said that this movie takes action kind of up a notch. Just like and
watching John Wick 1 and 2 very recently, it definitely feels like a step up.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean,
because I haven't seen them since the cinema, so it's sort of distant memory in the back of my mind.
One I think introduced a certain type of style that was really novel and cool. I don't think 2 really did anything with that. It just kind of continued more of the same. Like, the odds that, he was fighting against the odds, and that was impressive and all that kind of stuff. And, but it wasn't really anything wildly new. This one felt like a step above. Like there was like qualitative difference in the action.
What other positives did you guys get out of this? Because if you're going to John Wick, the action needs to deliver, and that box for me is fully ticked. Where else did you guys find some good in this film? Because I've got a lot to say in the back half of this non-spoiler.
Okay.
Well, so this is the 3rd chapter, as they call it. We've praised the action so much. How do you guys feel about the continuing story of John Wick as a man, as a person?
See, I
do we want to go with that, or
John Wick 1 and 2, as I said, I've only seen them once a piece in the cinema. It's been a while, and sort of this one can almost be watched as a standalone thing. Like, yes, you're going to get those threads coming through. I can't really remember much, but I liked how they did that. They had those elements weaving in with the old characters, but it could still be its own kind of.
See, I was going to say the exact opposite. Okay, when we started
that's just me not remembering much and still getting enjoyment.
But I just remember, like at the beginning of this film, I was trying to think if someone hadn't watched the previous film, would they understand what's going on now? And this film pretty much picks off right where the last film, started. Like there was no introduction. At least the second one, there seemed to be this like, who is it? It's John Wick. He's the Baba Yaga. He's the guy that killed the pencil type thing. Like they did this little introduction to like catch everyone up. This one, there was no catch up. There was just like it felt as though you were being just pushed straight into this.
I love that. And I think the best part of this film is that opening 20 minutes. I was so damn impressed.
Yeah.
I thought the tension was there. I thought It had this really cool. It just felt like there was. I don't know. It was just really exactly what I wanted to see in that opening moments. And there was quite a lot going on, but it's still, what was I impressed was you kind of dropped into this scenario and it didn't necessarily spoon feed you everything. It's sort of like, oh, okay, this is going on. And oh, okay, that's why that's happening. And you're kind of catching up on the details as it's being presented to you. And I just felt like that first 20 minutes was so good.
I'd be really interested to hear from anyone that hasn't watched the second one to see whether they got the same kind of enjoyment out of the first 20 minutes, because I feel like people would be really confused about what's going on, because a lot of what is,
because I couldn't remember what happened at the end of the second one, and I actually
but you knew that he'd been excommunicated though, right?
I mean, I just in the details of this, I remember I picked that up,
that's
but
my
I
point.
didn't.
Like, you have a reference point, whereas people that aren't, haven't watched.
But you can kind of get okay, he's on the run, and they're going to get off.
So yeah, I would say that I think this movie does a really good job at highlighting that while I think the first two and this one are much more convoluted than they need to be, because they're quite long movies and they throw kind of a lot of plot in between the action, but what this movie really highlights is that the first two movies can really be boiled down to like one plot point each, and that is all you need to know going into this one. I think there are a few little callbacks and fun little nods to the previous two films, but as I said, I can barely remember the second one. I feel like, all you need to know is that he misbehaved on sacred ground and got excommunicated. And the first one, you just need to know that his dog was killed and he had to avenge the dog.
Yeah,
and the wife.
I think that I don't know, because none of us have not seen it. I'd be really interested to hear from someone else, because I think that it's really important that you see the first two. Where I was
going with that was that by the time this movie finished, which I did not find the story like super engaging bit by bit as it was going on, but like seeing it as a whole and thinking of it in terms of how you can boil down those first two.
Yeah,
I kind of like it like that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I didn't think about it in that way.
I mean, to answer your actual question, which was how we felt about the story, I really liked how this story progressed. The second one, I'm gonna keep comparing this to the second one because it's capping off a trilogy, I suppose. The second one felt like a side mission more than it did a continuation of his story. This one felt very much a continuation of his story, and it felt as though there was some reason behind everything that he did. I think that there was nothing particularly crazy about the plot. Like, it wasn't like lots of twists and turns. I mean, there's a little bit of that at the end, but I mean, fairly straightforward. He's got to get to something and then do the thing, and then that's it.
And that's the weakness of this film for me. It's like,
really?
I'm smiling the whole time. The action's fantastic, but I'm really glazed over with these plot points. And 131 minutes, this is basically the opposite. Well, it's not really the opposite of Pokemon, but in Pokemon we reviewed last week, I wanted there to be more time to expand on the story. And in this one, I was like, trim it back, because I'm glazing over. He's going here, he's going there, and he's meeting this person, and none of these characters are that interesting.
You could cut out any single like large segment of this film, I feel, and I don't think I would have noticed in terms of how the plot was progressing.
I actually was like, what's he doing now? I don't care. And that's where the first 20 minutes, like, that tension was really there. And once that sequence had ended, there was no tension for me. And all the action sequences, I was like, John Wick's getting out of this fine, Same with at the end, even in the last fight sequence, John Wick, he's going to be fine.
There's only really one, I guess, segment that I think we could have done without. The other ones, and we can talk about that in the spoiler one more specifically, but and it's kind of in the middle there where I think you're going to feel the lull a little bit.
Big time.
But I definitely agree with you. The first 20, 30 minutes is spot on. And I really enjoyed the way that this kind of capped off, like the ending. So the last 20 or 30 minutes.
And in the back half, like John Wick, he does face some adversity, but he has this invincibility about him that I didn't feel like was there in the first 20 minutes. And that really intrigued me. And then when that was lost, that kind of was disappointing for me. So, but as I said, I was still smiling the whole way through. You can't help but smile in this movie. It's just, the action is that good. That ingredient alone. I say another good ingredient here is the music. Tyler Bates, man, with his like industrial metal thing that he does. So good.
I recognize him from 300.
Yeah.
Is kind of, I'm not sure what he's done since then. He's probably done a lot.
He is so prolific. He's
one of those names that keeps popping up, but I can never really associate him with a known property apart from 300. But yeah, it's very much that style, and I'm so on board with that.
So you go.
There were some cool themes that emerged in this, and I cannot for the life of me remember if they're a piece with stuff we've seen in the previous two movies.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I did. I appreciated that throughout.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the look of this film as well. I think not all of it, but I think overall it's really strong in its cinematography.
It was definitely. I mean, if we're talking about look, like cinematography, I think across the franchise is really good. In terms of effects and like particularly CGI or green screen or anything like that, this is miles ahead of the second one.
Okay.
That second one, I remember distinctively like looking at that being like, there's some weird green screen in this, like very bizarre.
Yeah, this was a polished looking movie. Because there was, most of it was just, kind of standard choreography and stuff, but there were moments that had asked a little bit more of the production, and I thought it was like seamless for almost like 99% of it.
Some CG knives and whatnot that was really well put together, I thought. It looked photorealistic.
And look, I think that 95% of this film was like spot on. A little bit of rubberiness around some of the like more actiony scenes when something had to obviously convert into CGI. But I mean, unless you've got a serious budget, you're always going to run into that.
Yeah, what are we working with here? It doesn't say on Wikipedia.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd have to assume it's more than the second one.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated this. I think the design of like the sets and the areas that they went into were really cool as well. There's a couple of different, locations, and I think that's really shown very well. One thing that we haven't talked about in terms of number 3, but we've talked about it in terms of how much we've enjoyed it in the previous films, is the world building, and I think that the movies have steadily kind of opened up the world and kind of expanded into it. I really enjoyed what they did with this in this one. I think that they opened up some really cool concepts. I just every single time they just kind of show you something a little bit new, and I'm so down for it.
Yeah, I kind of, to me it feels mostly like nonsense, but like just super intriguing nonsense.
Yeah.
Like in I guess sci-fi when they'll talk about the battle of such and such, and you just have like throwaway line, but the way they just throw all these different concepts in, it's like, man, this world is fucking insane.
Yeah.
And I hope we never get most of it explained. Like it delves into his like origin briefly, very briefly, and I'm like, man, this is also all sounds so weird and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm so torn because it's the fan reaction in me is like, oh, I want the origin story, of him coming up in the blah blah blah, and then I have to kind of check myself, be like, no, it's actually kind of cool that it's left, as a throwaway line, and I think they do that really well, and I think it makes the world seem fuller.
A funny, really random thing it reminds me of is Dragon Ball Z. The way from arc to arc that show would be like, all right, here's like God. And then like the next season, it's like, okay, now there's 4 gods above him.
Yeah.
And they're over the universe. And the next one's like, okay, now each of those 4 gods is like another 4 gods over there. And
16 gods.
Now we're talking about parallel universes. And,
yeah.
It just felt like they just kept throwing up weird like other levels. And like, this is so
And then they didn't over-explain it and over-indulge in trying to get the hierarchy there. It was like, and when they don't do that, it adds an aura of mystery and imagination makes it feel bigger.
I also think that they do a really good job of maintaining consistency in the lore that they've already explained, though, which I think is really impressive as well. With them throwing that much stuff on the wall, it is surprising how well organized it all kind of turns out to be. So I thought that was really cool.
I'll take your word for it because I have no concept of how this world actually functions.
I've just finished the first 2 films recently, so it's fresh in my mind. And they do maintain a relatively sound amount of consistency throughout it. So I think that's really impressive.
I just can't wait for John Wick 9, where it's just revealed that every single person in the world is an assassin. Like
Well,
the
yeah,
whole world
exactly,
is just this functioning guild of assassins.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
Mm.
Well, 6 movies left, bro. I'm sure that with the success of this one, we're going to get John Wick 4, 5, 6, no doubt.
Were there any other things that so you've kind of talked about the pacing maybe being a little bit, well, not even the pacing, but just like trimming it up. Was there anything else that you found wasn't as advertised or?
Not really, man. Like, I can't really put any more complaints on this other than that. Like, everyone's performance was solid. Keanu was great. Ian Holm was great. Lawrence Fishburne did his due diligence.
Can we just call out one particular guy, Mark Dacascos? He was the bald fellow, the like one of the main characters.
Did we just see this movie?
The
We
bold
did,
fellow.
the Japanese guy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he was so much fun.
He was terrific.
the highlight.
He's like the MVP
Definitely.
of the series. Other like of the 3 movies, I
Yep.
feel, other than John Wick himself.
Totally.
I enjoyed him so much more than I expected to after with his
and he had a
introduction.
nice dichotomy with his character, how he had the sort of honorable or samurai martial artist, and then he was like this crazy guy who said cool and stuff. It was that was refreshing to
He
see.
was so fun. That dude is 55 years old.
Really?
Is he? Well
Watching the
done to
moves
him.
he was pulling off in that movie, I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Lawrence Fishburne in this a lot more than I did in the previous one.
Was he just shouting and laughing in the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He's
that
doing
kind of
some of
bothered
that
me.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, he's still playing the same character, but I think it was a little bit more kind of reserved and purposeful. Like the other one, just the last one I just found weird. I was like almost kind of distracting.
Yes.
Still a little bit.
The only thing that I'd have to say in terms of weird acting is Jerome Flynn's accent in this is weird.
I thought he was good.
Yeah?
I was my main issue with him was just that it's like, Game of Thrones guy pops up, and I was just like feeling the audience being like, oh, this is a Game of Thrones guy.
Yeah.
But
Maybe
I
that's why
thought he was
it was
really
weird,
good in it. My only disappointment with the cast is I was kind of hoping that Carrie Ann Moss would show up in this to get just like the full Matrix reunion
Oh,
going.
yeah, that would be cool.
And I feel like there was a really obvious role for her in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Was maybe at some point in production they were trying to do it, but then that is obviously not an actual complaint about this film. But I really would have liked that
Like almost, it's a missed opportunity. Not
because
an
they
actual...
threw in that the actual line, the line from the Matrix, which is
Yeah.
the trailers, the
Yeah, they
guns, like
Yeah.
a lot
There
of
was
guns.
quite a few things that reminded me of the Matrix, intentionally or not. A few little references in there.
Is
That,
Keanu Reeves in this?
what?
Yeah, the guy from the Matrix.
Shit!
Yeah.
I thought his name was actually John Wick. Shit.
This is
okay.
this is a documentary. It's not a.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I don't know. I think we should get into some spoilers now if we don't
Yeah,
have
yeah, let's
anything
do it.
more. But as a wrap up, I think that John Wick 3 does everything it needs to do. It just could have used a bit of trimming of the fat, maybe a bit more of an engaging plot. I really can't express enough how much I was glazed over in that second half, and the quality of the first 20 minutes. If they'd been able to maintain that the whole way through, there's no way that this would be the best in the franchise easily. But it is what it is. Action's great, and that's really why you're going there, is to see the action. So I can't really. I think it's it's a recommend.
Yeah, I I don't have any complaints about the plot because I kind of knew what I was getting into. Like all the you can only fit so much into a film, right? And I think that they put so much action and so much world building, and that's really what sustains me in this world, or in this movie. So look, I really enjoyed it. I think it was the best way I can describe it is it's just a really good time. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I the most praise obviously we can give this is I think this is legitimately some of the best action in Western cinema, period. So if you have if you're someone who doesn't like action at all or action movies, you'll probably find nothing to like in this movie. But if you care at all, this is the one you want to see this year, just in terms of pure action. For me, I'm pretty sure this is my favorite in the franchise. This film, even the first movie, John Wick, I was a little let down by just because of how high the hype was. I feel like it kind of petered out towards the end. This movie did not do that for me. This it's a long movie, and I was honestly ready was thinking it was going to end.
Yeah, same.
What turned out to be maybe 30 or 40 minutes before the end. I thought it did, and I knew how long it was. I knew the runtime. I'm like, that's probably about it right now, yeah. Because there's just a lot in here, and I'm saying that in the most way you can not say that as a complaint. But again, don't go see this movie if you're like super tired, because it'll lose you somewhere.
Yeah, 100%.
But then that last chunk happened, and I'm like, fuck, this is amazing. So yeah, not the most amazing movie in terms of all the stuff outside of the action, but favorite in the franchise for me.
Nice.